If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello and welcome to If This Goes On, Don't Panic. Today we have author Alex Jennings with us. Kat, how are things going with you?
Things are going really well. I'm having a lovely day. My girlfriend has come down for a few days, or come up from Atlanta.
Awesome.
And we have the book launch for Rumor Has It on this Tuesday.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to reading that, to be honest.
And so how are things with you?
Oh boy, this week has been wild. Oh gosh. I mean, personal stuff, which I won't talk about, work stuff, which I'm not going to get into. On top of that, I had my black belt test this week.
Ooh.
Yep. I took the second half yesterday and I am sore as hell.
Oh my gosh, I bet. But do you have the black belt now?
I don't know yet. I don't know if I passed, but I think I did. I think I did pretty good. I definitely think that test was intended for somebody 20 years younger than me. Yeah, so I'm like aching everywhere. Right before this phone call, I just took a handful of Advil. I'm like, oh God, I just can't barely even move. Oh man.
I hate to tell you, dude, it doesn't get any better.
I know. I'm kind of glad that I hit my black belt now.
Yeah. I do want to point out it would have been much more impressive if you'd done it, say, at the age of 70 or 80.
That's true too. That is true. Absolutely 100% true. Oh boy. What else is going on? So we're working on the website, the new website for the podcast. So that's happening.
With our cool new logo that we're so excited to unveil to the world.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this website done before this logo's been hanging out for too long.
Yeah.
But we're working on it behind the scenes when we get a moment. We also have transcripts going on, so we finally got somebody on board to help us clean up the transcripts that we had put together.
Oh, fabulous!
Yeah, because they were.
Fabulous.
I mean, I hesitate to even call it AI, but transcription services are like
transcription services are
yeah. They're like a good starting point, but they are usually a mess.
That's it. No, you've got to have a human being go over them, or else they're just incoherent. It's like auto-generated subtitles.
Yes, 100%. Yes. And then the other, I kind of have a little bit of a big announcement. I don't even know how official this is yet. I guess I've sent emails about it. So I'm officially joining the board of Parsec, which runs the Confluence Con in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yep.
I will be at Confluence next year.
Yes. And I will be a member of the board, so,
We will be
God help me.
Well, I look forward to hearing your adventures in nonprofit management because, as you know, I have many stories and opinions about it.
Yes, they will not be on the podcast, probably.
No, that would be a separate podcast.
Yes. But it'll be interesting. Scott Knoll's been asking me to be on for years now, and I keep telling him no. Finally, after this last year, I was like, fine, I will join. Because there was just not that there was any huge problems or anything at Confluence. There were just some things that I was like, I think it would be better if we did this, and it would be better if we did this other thing.
Dude, that's how they get you. You form an opinion, and then they're like, yeah, you should join the board. You can get your opinions enforced.
Yes. So hopefully they will be good. One of which is more COVID enforcement, because as an at-risk person, it really annoys me that conferences suck at that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we should probably get to our guest.
We should absolutely get to our guest because I am so excited about our guest. And as you know, I came and I was like, we have to interview him because I love this book so much. So, yes, let's please start.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we will be right back with our guest, Alex Jennings. Okay, and we are back. Alex Jennings is a comedian. Well, and I will be asking about that for sure. Educator and award-winning author whose writing has appeared in Current Affairs magazine, Pseudopod, and New Sons, volumes 1 and 2. He is an instructor of popular fiction at Stone Coast MFA program, as well as a columnist for the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. His debut novel, The Ballad of Perilous Graves, was released by Orbit / Redbook in 2022. We will definitely be talking about that some. His fiction and poetry have been shortlisted for numerous awards, including the Ernest J. Gaines Award, the Ray Bradbury Prize for Speculative Fiction, the Locus Award for Best Debut Novel, and the World Fantasy Award. He is the winner of the 2023 Compton Crook Prize from the Baltimore Science Fiction Society. He lives and works in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. As of this publication, he has lost 135 pounds and counting. Find out more at www.alexjennings.net. Welcome, Alex.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kat, so as Kat kind of mentioned already, I ask every now and then, I drop in on Kat and Diana or other co-hosts, like, hey, is there anyone that you guys are interested in? And she's like, we have to get this guy, Alex Jennings, on. This book is amazing.
Well, it is.
I appreciate that so much.
It really is. And yeah, can I just start asking questions,
Yeah,
Alan?
do it.
Absolutely.
Well, I love this book because it's such a big, sprawling city book, and you have multiple characters, and you have kind of plot lines running in parallel. And I think one reviewer mentioned that the reader has to trust you to kind of get that you will deliver sense, which you do, and it's kind of like an amazing, wonderful way. And I love that, but I also know as a writer myself, sometimes it's hard to keep track of that stuff. And so I'm
For
just
sure.
curious when you were writing, kind of like how did you keep things straight?
Uh, I would keep notes of like who characters were and what their relationships were to each other. And then I don't know, like I just tried to keep track while editing, and
Uh-uh.
then my editor at Orbit for this book, Nivea Evans, was really helpful
Oh,
with
awesome.
like helping me keep track of things and make sure that things connect in the way that they need to.
Good editor is just such a fabulous addition to any book, I think, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You mention in the not the preface, the afterword, but you're talking about how let me find the line. It's about your father who kind of, what is it? There's something about he inspired you to write the blackest fantasy without kind of like actually instructing you to do it. Here it is. Tasked
Yeah.
me to write the blackest fantasy I could concoct. And I think that is so lovely. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. Well, my dad used to read fantasy novels to me and my little brother when we were little, and he read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings to us, and especially The Lord of the Rings has a lot of like black is evil
Yeah.
language in it, and
Mm-hmm.
he put the book down one night and said, I wish there was a fantasy like this where everyone was black and the darkest one with the blackest skin is the hero. And
Oh, yeah.
that really stayed with me all my life. And
Mhm.
when I started working on this book, not only did I find myself working toward that, but without realizing it, I dropped a fictionalized version of my father at that age in as the protagonist, Perry Graves. And it's kind of my love letter to both my family and the adopted city that I love so.
Oh, that's fabulous. And that really comes through. Really comes through.
And music, I would say too, because
Oh,
there's so
yeah.
much about music in here.
Oh, absolutely.
When I think one of the fun things about it is when I was kind of researching for the call, I ran across the Spotify playlist that you did to go with the book.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that must have been a lot of fun to put together.
It really was. I listen to a lot of music while I write, and while I was writing this book, I was listening to a lot of New Orleans music, and it really helped. And originally, all of the songs in the book were actual songs by New
Uh-huh.
Orleans musicians. And after I sold it, my editor was like, you can't do that, right?
Ah,
You're gonna have to redo all the songs, and so I did, and it seems to have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, but irritating that you had to do that.
I mean, I guess like it was a really interesting question as to whether I could capture the proper feel for the songs that I love so much that animate the city,
Mhm.
and give a sense of the rhythm and the melody on the page. And it seems to have worked for people. And I was really happy to have the chance to do that.
That's awesome.
Actually, I have a question along those lines, if you don't mind me asking it. And if you don't want to do this, we can strike this. But first of all, the songs, which are also characters, had some really awesome names and some really awesome personalities. For example, you had one named Stagger Lee in there.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could describe what some of the characters sound like as songs.
Okay, so Stagger Lee is a very popular character of Black folklore. He was a real person who committed a murder at the turn of the 20th century in East St. Louis. And so he's kind of entered into Black culture as the subject of toasts, songs, like there are a lot of murder ballads about him, and he just keeps popping up and popping up. And actually, Stagger Lee is one of the few characters that I actually have an exact voice for that's like kind of different from my own. And so let me see if I can do this on the phone. I haven't tried it in a long time, but I do it when I read the book aloud.
Oh, fabulous.
So Stagger Lee kind of sounds like this.
Oh, that's fabulous.
I have to hold my throat in a very specific way to like get that exact resonance.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's got to be amazing when you're reading.
But yeah, check out the versions of Stagger Lee's song. Dr. John has a great one, and there have just been so many over the years.
Okay. I'm writing this down just so you know, so I don't forget.
Mhm.
So you would say he's kind of like a folk song then, kind of like a
Yeah, he's a blues song. There are a lot of jazz versions of the song as well, and there are some
Yep.
slightly more countrified ones, and there are little bits and pieces of his myth that appear in some toasts and not others. And like it fits in perfectly to New Orleans music because so many New Orleans musicians have done versions of that song, and there are myths surrounding New Orleans musicians as well. So he really fit right in.
Oh, that's so interesting. This is maybe somewhat of a non sequitur here, but as a musician, it's interesting to see what songs pop up over and over again and like what parts get taken from some
Mhm.
songs then mixed into others. Just very fascinating.
Right. I'm fascinated by the feature of Black storytelling known as signifying, because it's part of storytelling, but also part of jazz, especially traditional New Orleans jazz, where you take bits and pieces of things, and then elaborate on them, put them in a new context, and make them your own.
Ah,
Mhm.
And I really wanted this story to be informed by that. I read The Signifying Monkey by Henry Louis Gates, which is a fantastic
Mhm.
book about storytelling in the African diaspora. And it just really captured my imagination and like defined some things that I had noticed about stories told like in my family, in my community, and it was extremely helpful for the writing of this book.
Yeah.
So interesting. I was just listening to a podcast this morning about Little Richard, and apparently, and I can't remember the names of either of the songs, but Led Zeppelin, their drummer took the drum intro from one of Little Richard's songs and put it into one of the Led Zeppelin songs because he was a huge fan of Little Richard's drummer. So he wanted to like have like a little, like
Mhm.
call out to him in one of the songs. And it's like,
Right.
of course, it's like a super famous song from both musicians.
I love that kind of stuff. I'm an obsessive music nerd myself, so I'll go looking for little samples and bits of songs to find where they were lifted from. And like now, with the way the internet has grown and changed, that's a
Mhm.
lot easier than it used to be.
Oh
But I
yeah.
Yeah.
remember like hunting for um, the source of the sample to this song, the 900 number that came out like I think in the 80s or 90s.
Mhm.
And like it took me forever to find out that that's actually from a song by one of James Brown's proteges called Unwind Yourself. And it's like the first 3 seconds or so of the song, and somebody stretched it out to an entire track. And it's just like, I love it. I love it so much. I love hunting for things like
Oh,
that. Oh, that's awesome.
James Brown has been borrowed so much. Like, geez, any
Oh,
'90s hip
yeah.
hop song, like all of Wu Tang, I think is James Brown.
Oh, a lot.
Yeah, yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool. I think writers tend to do that a lot too, like who do you borrow from? Who were some of your influences?
Oh, so many. I mean, at its heart, like my book is a black exploitation Pippi Longstocking adventure, you know?
Yeah.
So like taking that character and recontextualizing her for Central City, New Orleans in a fantastical version that's post Katrina. That was kind of where the story began, and I grabbed little bits and pieces from all over, especially from like music history. Like uh, a lot of the time when I was writing this book, I was studying New Orleans music, like both in college and then
Mm.
I worked with the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra as their copy consultant for a while. And so just seeing
Well, that's cool.
yeah, I mean, it was a really fascinating time, and like, there's just so much information out there. Like, Little Richard was here for a long time. He would come back to New Orleans a lot after he blew up as well, and he was good friends with like one of our sainted figures of New Orleans music, James Booker, and they used to have a great time together, like riding a pink Cadillac up and down Canal Street and like yelling
Huh,
at people on the street.
huh.
And I love little stories like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
You have traveled a great deal, and I believe you were born in Germany and have wandered around a good bit. And you mentioned New Orleans as your adopted home. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that draws to you at New Orleans? Because it seems like such a fabulous city to be writing and setting speculative fiction in.
I mean, it really is. My father was a diplomat. Like in the 60s, the State Department had this big farm program to get more black foreign service agents to do diplomatic relations with the countries in Africa that were getting their independence. And so he got into the foreign service in like 67 and stayed in until 2001. So I was born in Germany, grew up in Botswana, Suriname, Tunisia, the United States. And, I came down to New Orleans on a whim in 2003 with my late brother. And it just really reminded me a lot of Paramaribo, Suriname. There's like a very Caribbean feel to it.
Mhm.
Something very sort of old world about it. Like it's as weird and almost out of place as French Guiana is in South America. And it really spoke to me. So
Mhm.
we decided to move down here, and we came in the summer of 2006, like almost a year after Hurricane Katrina, and the city was really hurting then,
Yeah.
but I felt accepted by it, And it's the first place I've been able to put down what feel like real roots. Like before,
Nice.
but before I lived in New Orleans, home was wherever my family was. And, most of my family are in the DC, Baltimore area, but New Orleans became my home. And, even though I moved to Baton Rouge in January, it still very much feels like home. And, my partner and I are here almost every weekend because we still do stand up in the city, and so many of our friends are here, and the culture is just it's just really hard to pull yourself away from, and we love it so much.
Nice.
You mentioned that you do stand up, and the defining mood of this novel to me is really kind of joyful. I mean, there are scary parts to it, I mean, the main bad guy is pretty scary, right? There's like zombies walking around and stuff, right? There's definitely elements of horror and stuff in here, but ultimately I think it's a very joyful book. Why was it important to you, and I guess this is assuming that you did it intentionally, why was it important for you to include that as the primary mood?
Well, I wanted it to mirror blackness writ large. Like
Mm.
there are a lot of difficulties surrounding being black. There's a lot of oppression. There's a lot of heartache, but there's also this alchemical process that like turns that pain into joy, or at least runs a vein of joy alongside it. And so, like, while my life has been difficult because of my background, it's also been very joyful. Like just the camaraderie, the sense of community, the focus on our family, the joy of rediscovering our history and creating culture, of making something out of nothing, like, is extremely important to me. And if I'm writing a book about the city dearest to me and the people dearest to me, then that has to be the overwhelming mood.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. I have a question, which is, and this kind of coming from the publishing angle. You have child characters, right? You have Perry and Brandy as half of the kind of carrying, I think, a huge amount of the book. How did you avoid getting this book billed as YA?
Well, it was not easy to keep it away from that. But when I first spoke to Nivea at Orbit, she understood the book as an adult story and wanted to frame it as an adult fantasy. So she suggested adding in more adult POVs. And actually, Casey had a much smaller role in the early drafts and in the version that I sold. And she told me to beef it up and actually grow the book as a whole into a kind of larger standalone story that
Nice.
would serve as sort of a mic drop, like I do have more stories to write in that world and possibly with those characters even, but I wanted to make sure that if I was, hit by a bus before I could do something else, that this book left it all on the table.
Yeah, I picked up on that too, Kat. I almost felt like there were two completely different books here melded together. When you're reading the chapters with Percival and Brendy, right, especially at the beginning, it's like it's very imaginative, very like fun, all this weird stuff happening, right? Very magical, right? Very fantastic. And then you get to Casey's chapters and they start a lot more grounded, right? And
Right.
a lot more serious.
A lot darker. I mean, a lot. The mood
Right.
is more somber,
Yeah.
right?
It was very interesting how you gradually pull them together. And something I noticed, and I don't know if you did this on purpose, is the first chapter where you have Casey in with Percival and Peaches and Brendy is the first chapter where Peaches is like ever been hurt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't help but notice that, and I was like, oh, so like I guess where I'm going with this is it was really an interesting structure in that way. They keep flipping back and forth. When I started reading, with the kids' point of view, I was like, oh man, I could just give this to my sons to read. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
this would just be totally in line with everything they're reading. And then it flipped over, and that was interesting. And then it was very interesting how you started bringing it together and how that affected the characters and even the world. You know?
Right. I mean, one of the things I wanted to do with this book was write a fantasy novel for the kid I was when I was 10 or 11. And like, at that time I was reading things aimed way above my head. I was reading a lot of Stephen King. I was reading Echende and stuff. And, I also, one of the things I loved about the children's literature that I read as a boy was a sense of danger, like a sense of bad things possibly happening. And the fact that triumphing or averting disaster was something with real stakes. So I knew I wanted to have that edge in there. And as for Casey meeting with the kids for the first time after Peaches is hurt, it wasn't entirely conscious, but I know that the times in my life when I've experienced like a lot of pain or a lot of trauma, what allowed me to heal and what allowed me to continue on was the camaraderie with the people around me, both bio family and chosen family, and how we're able to lift each other up and have each other's backs when things go wrong. So it was very important to me to have that sensibility in here too.
So I also love Pippi Longstocking, and when I found this transfigured version of her in the book, I loved it so much. But why Pippi Longstocking, Alex?
For a couple of reasons. For one thing, when I moved to New Orleans, there were a lot of stories in the news and on social media about kids who were forced to return to the city without their parents and sort of take care of themselves and fend for themselves while they waited for their parents to be able to come be with them. And the first thing that made me think of was Pippi Longstocking, like living in that house by herself with all those animals. And dad's out sailing the seven seas. And so that had me thinking, what if Pippi Longstocking was a little red-bone girl living in Central City, New Orleans? And the rest of the story grew out of that.
That's so fabulous.
Yeah, she's such an interesting character. It's also very clear that you like comic books from
Oh,
this
yeah,
book.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about your comic book influence, and then tell us who your favorite characters are.
Oh, geez. Okay. I I first became enamored of comics when I was like 3 years old. My older brother HT would just tell me about stories and things that happened in the Marvel and DC comics that he read. And my older sister taught me to read when I was 4, and the first thing I did was pick up a copy of Uncanny X-Men, the issue where Madeline Pryor first uses her telekinesis to hold back Scott Summers' eye beams.
Oh, yeah.
All this time he's suspecting that she's somehow his dead wife, his dead girlfriend. And, at 4 years old, I'm reading this and I'm like, look, I don't understand any of this, but whatever's happening, like I dig the emotion. It's really cool, and I just want to read this for like forever. So the X-Men have always been super important to me. And in fact, like I'm really big on Afrofuturism, and I feel like the era of the X-Men that just ended, where they were all living on the island of Krakoa, and they had done away with the heroes versus villains mentality, just trying to like survive and carve out a world for themselves, with the human race always gunning for them. Like that really resonates with me. And there's just so many great stories here. I'm also super in love with Miles Morales. the other Spider-Man. Love that character. Love everything that he's in. Even play the video game. I love that. I'm also a huge fan of Jakeem Thunder in the DC universe, who has his, genie inside a magic pen, and his magic word when he hits the plunger to summon the genie is so cool. I really love that, and like, in fact, I allude to that in the book a couple times. I've always wanted to write a Jakeem Thunder maxi series, like 12 issues long, and see if I can elevate him to the A list of the DC heroes.
Oh, I think you
But
should.
yeah, like those are my very favorites. But I also love Black Panther. Oh, there was a comic a while back, I think written by Dwayne McDuffie, called The Crew, that was like the White Panther, War Machine, I think Josiah X, and like a bunch of black characters
Oh, wow.
operating in the Marvel universe, trying to uh, solve street level issues. I loved that so much.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we are in an age now where superhero movies have just amazing special effects and can
Right.
often live up to sort of the glory of reading it when you're a kid, right? And it's just like everything is so freaking cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That, like, seeing that first Avengers movie, like I had waited so long for that.
Yeah.
I just loved it so much.
So I presume, have you done any comic writing? Because I would think that would be a great, I mean, it sounds like you would be a good fit for it.
I've done a little bit of comic scripting of like my own projects. I haven't done any stuff for like the big two or anything yet. The comic project that I have is not out yet, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
And I would love to do more of that. I really enjoy it. I've done a little podcast scripting. There's kind of a secret project that's going to be out next year, I think, that I hope people will really dig.
Oh,
I got to do something with one of my like favorite franchises.
oh, cool. I'm guessing that you can't talk about it yet.
I mean, I think I could talk about it. It's like, my thing was always that I love Aquaman and I love the Submariner, but
Yeah.
their world and like their whole deal didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And so I find myself thinking, like, okay, so they're from Atlantis, but the history of Atlantis and like the way the story originated from like Socrates and Plato didn't really make sense, because it describes Atlantis as being like a full-fledged like Greek style city state almost 11,500 years ago, when they're like, that just didn't exist. So I came up with the idea that, like, oh, maybe time is broken somehow, and there was a world where there was an Atlantis back then, but something terrible happened to make that not true anymore in our world.
Nice.
And so, like, I also put a huge Afrofuturist spin on it. So instead of Atlantis, it's the undersea kingdom from the Ballad of Perilous Graves, Grand Lalu. And it also involves like an elder god and eating time, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds fabulous.
I mean, Elder God, you got me there for sure.
You had me at Elder God.
Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of Afrofuturism meets Elder Gods in comics.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. That sounds really interesting. Kat, I know some of your favorite characters are X-Men too, correct?
I love the X-Men. I think I started reading just when like Chris Claremont was starting to write them, and it was the Claremont John Byrne team up, and the artwork was very beautiful. But there was also the the Phoenix storyline was one that I always
Oh,
really thought was amazing.
yeah, that was so good. That was so good.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll get to see it adapted properly.
Oh, that would be so cool. God, yes.
It really would.
Oh, from lips to God's ears, as we say, right?
Yeah.
I hope so. I'm finally catching up and reading The Fall of X. Um, I do kind of wish the Krakoa era had gone on forever,
Yeah.
but I've got to get caught up and see
Yeah.
where everything lies, especially now that Gail Simone is writing Uncanny.
Yeah.
Like that's very important to me because I love Gail Simone's work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she's done some amazing work. And I think it's going to be looking like what the first issue has come out of hers, right?
The first two issues are out.
Issues. Okay.
So I bought that and I bought the collection of Fall of X and Rise and Powers of X. When I was back east this last week, and so I'm about halfway through reading that, and it's doing it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have to make a trip to the comic book store, I can tell.
Yeah.
Well, two questions for you. Number one, we'll just start with this one because this is going to be the more controversial question.
Ooh.
How do you feel about the Marvel movies now? Like, do you like the trajectory? Which
I
ones are
mean,
your favorites? Give us your opinions. I know you have them, being a comics fan.
there's still a lot to like there.
Mhm.
I like what they've done with most of the characters. I feel like the formula that they were going with for a long time is not working as well anymore,
Mhm.
and so they've kind of got to establish a different direction. And like they had a lot of issues that were beyond their control, like putting so many resources behind like the rise of Kang and then like the whole Jonathan
Mhm.
Majors situation and all of that. But I'm really hoping that they can figure out a way to freshen things up and reinvent themselves. I mean, I liked Deadpool and
Yeah.
Wolverine, like I liked that, but a lot of the other movies right now aren't really doing it for me.
Mhm.
And so I want to see more weird oddball stuff. Like I want to
Yeah.
see more stuff like the Werewolf by Night special.
Yeah.
Let some of
That was
the
awesome. Yeah.
I mean, it was so good, and we just haven't heard anything about it since.
No.
Right.
And I'm still watching a lot of what they put out,
Yeah.
but I'm not watching it as closely
Mhm.
as I had been before. And like my first love is and will always be the comics. Like that's what I care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Second question for you is: have you ever met Zigzag Claiborne?
I have not met him yet. Like we've corresponded a little bit, and I want to work with him as soon as possible. Like I love his positivity. I
Yeah.
love the stuff that he's
That's
always saying on social media, and that's before you even get to his brilliant writing and editing.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't met him yet.
Kat and I were talking about this before we started, before you were even on. Your work actually reminds me a lot of what was the name of his
Brothers
Brothers
Jetstream.
Jetstream. That's it. Yeah, yeah,
I've heard that, and I love the comparison. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You really went all in. So this question I had for you, Zig is pretty much a regular on the podcast. We have him on all the time. We were talking to him about the Brothers Jetstream, and he had mentioned that it was kind of his everything but the Sync book, right, where he just like threw everything in there.
Right.
I really feel like your book was like that in a lot of ways.
Oh, it was.
As I'd already mentioned, there are definitely horror elements, right? We've got superhero elements. We've got like just straight up magic happening, right?
Yep.
Why did you decide to just throw everything in there? And then also because I know this could be a problem in publishing. I mean, Zig even told us that was one of the problems that he had with the Brothers Jetstream's books. People were saying there's too much in there. How did you approach that when you were shopping the book around?
Well, that's a good question. I did present it as first and foremost a contemporary fantasy because that's what mattered to me most. But it was also sort of modeled off of things like the major comic universes. Like they have so much going on. Like they skip genre to genre very easily and quickly. You've got space opera elements, you've got more traditional fantasy, you've got sort of science fiction, you've got contemporary fantasy. So I wanted to create a world where there was a sense that anything could happen. And I wanted to include all of the things that gave me gee whiz moments of wonder as a kid. And that's, that's robots, that's flying saucers, that's hidden kingdoms, like all of that stuff. And then I just wanted to make it a love letter to everything that fired my imagination.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Zig is also a huge comic book fan, just so you know, and he is the exact same opinion on the Phoenix comic or the Phoenix movie.
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yes, I feel every reasonable fan has that same opinion.
I've never come across anybody who is happy with it, honestly.
Yeah.
That's what any reasonable fan.
Well, it's true. I am a reasonable.
There have to be people out there who that was their very first exposure to any of those concepts. And like, I bet there are people out there who have imprinted on it. And in 20 years, they're going to be talking about how great it was.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Naming their child.
You can find
Gene.
any weird thing. What were you saying, Kat?
I said naming their child Gene.
Yeah.
Shout out for the fact that the parents of the kids are so involved in their lives, as opposed to a lot of times when we have kind of like fantasy children and they're just sort of latchkey kids, or the parents are, what is it, Lemony Snicket has kidnapped them or whatever. So was that a deliberate choice?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up largely in the 80s, so in some sense I was a latchkey kid, but my parents were all also always very closely involved in my life as well. And since this is a story that's kind of a tribute to my family, like I had to include the parents as well, for sure.
I think that's really lovely, and it's one of the things I like about this book is it's just got so many things that are interesting and unusual, and kind of you look at it from different angles, and it has something new to show you. I mean, I don't teach at the college level, but this book makes me wish that I did, so I could assign it and make a bunch of students read it and talk about it.
Oh, that is really sweet. Thank you.
So yeah,
Yes, I could 100% see that.
it would make a hell of a
Like a lot of classes have been using it, and I always appreciate that very
good.
much. Like it's
Yeah.
like the idea behind it was that sure, I would have loved for it to have been a giant bestseller or whatever, but more than anything, I wanted to include enough in it that it can be looked at in a lot of different ways, so that years down the line, like people would still be discovering it and buying it and getting into the world, because those were the books that I loved best.
Have you thought about doing a graphic novel adaptation of it?
I have. Orbit has the graphic rights. I always fantasized about Kyle Baker doing a comic adaptation, because I love his work so much. Like both his Marvel and DC stuff and his indie stuff is so good. So yeah, that would be.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Well, tell Orbit to get on the stick, sell the rights. We all know publishers pay attention when authors call up and demand things. So
absolutely.
What is a question that nobody has asked that you wish people had asked about the book?
Oh wow. I thought people might ask me which of the fantastical elements come directly from my life and which were completely made up whole cloth.
Ooh.
Because there is some stuff from my actual life in there. Like there's a character who has a habit of speaking to the dead, and like that's definitely something in my family.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
it's Casey's mom, and I have the same attitude towards it that Casey does. Like
Mhm.
I know my mom is not like lying, and she's not like nuts or anything. However, I don't go all the way and like
Right.
think of myself as someone who believes in ghosts, you know?
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, yeah, stuff like that. Somebody asked me a question I had never expected the other day. He asked me if the preacher that appears toward the very end of the book might be Milo from the Phantom Tollbooth, all grown up.
Oh,
Um,
oh God.
I really, I really appreciated being asked like that. Asked about that because that's the only person who's ever approached me.
So it is Milo?
Uh, yeah, I guess I'll admit that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the idea is that is Milo all grown up, and he's been on a lot of further adventures that have changed him a lot. And maybe he's not the best guy at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. The road ages you,
Yeah.
and well, that's awesome.
It's canon now. It's canon
That's
now.
it. That's it.
I suppose so. I was debating on whether to say anything about that publicly, but
I find it very interesting that you mentioned Phantom Tollbooth so much in here. I just happened to be reading that book to one of my sons, and I'd never read it before. We're not very far in. We're only
mhm.
like 2 or 3 chapters in. But what is your relationship with that novel in particular?
I mean, I really loved it as a kid, both the book and the film adaptation, and
Mhm.
it was one of the few books written specifically for children that I really got into after I was,
Mhm.
say, 8. And it's kind of stayed with me over the years. I've thought about it often, and I really, really, really love it. And I wanted to,
Yeah,
place that love in Perry.
that's awesome. I mean, I think
That's awesome.
one of the nice things about being a writer is being able to pay homage to all the sort of influences that have touched you in the books that you really loved. And I think then that love shows in the book that you are writing as well.
That was what I was hoping for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, that was just very surprising to be. Oh my god! I just happen to be reading this book right now with my kid. What is happening here? It's one of those weird. What do they call that? Strange coincidences.
Synchronicity.
It's synchronicity. That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it.
Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about storytelling, period, is those synchronicities, like that moment when you see an unusual word for the first time and then you start noticing it everywhere, like that.
Mhm.
That's the stuff I love the best.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I think is going to happen with Stagger Lee now. I'm going to start being like, oh my God, there's Stagger Lee. Oh my God. Because I'm a huge music nerd too. And I had never, I'm obviously in a very different direction if I have not heard of Stagger Lee, right? So it'll be interesting to see where his name
Oh
creeps
yeah,
up.
he's around. He's definitely around. John Horner Jacobs wrote a horror novella involving Stagger Lee some years ago called, I think that one was called A Lush and Seething Hell.
Oh, awesome.
I know it was packaged along with another novella, but it is
Ooh,
really fantastic. I love that guy's work.
what is a great take?
Oh
He
yeah.
is so good. Yeah.
That was a pretty popular one. I remember hearing about that quite a bit, actually. I think that was during my no horror phase.
Huh?
Okay, well, we are getting towards the end, so we should start wrapping this up. So, what is bringing you hope right now, Alex?
A lot of things. Being able to make progress with my health in a way that I never have before, like being in my 40s. Like it's not so much the weight loss; it's the other things that go along with it uh, that are the point for me. You know, music brings me a lot of hope. The way stories play out in our world, I have a lot of hope. Like a hope from family. My dog Karate Valentino gives me a lot of help, and then my partner Nkechi Chibweza. And just like being able to laugh, like as a comic, like one of the most important things we do is laugh together. And yeah, those are things giving me hope right now.
Okay, this is off the beaten path, but I gotta ask you, like, what when did you decide to be a comic? It just seems like so hard. Like I can't. Ah, man, I am. That is the opposite of my personality. Like I could never stand up there by myself and do that. Like I've played in bands, I could do it with a group of people, but I could never stand up there and like, I don't know. It's very brave.
Well, I mean, I've kind of always been into stand up, and I think I've always been a bit of a performer on some level. But in like toward the end of 2012 or 2013, I got called up on stage at an improv show, and I got laughs doing that, and I really liked that. And so there was an open mic at the same theater a little bit later, and I went up and told like two and a half jokes, but I got laughs, and that's narcotizing, man. Like that feeling of getting those laughs from a room full of strangers, and so I just kept doing it. I took time off in 2017 to like get back to the novel and finish it up. But since my partner and I have been together, I've been getting back into it more, and like now I'm co-producing a show in Baton Rouge, and I'm still not going up quite regularly, but I am going up and I am writing, and there's nothing else like it. Like for one thing, there is so much waiting involved in publishing, but stand up is about instant gratification. Set up, punchline,
Yeah.
tag, you get the laughs right then, you get all your cookies, you eat them, and it is magical in a similar way to story, in that like I have had my back go out before I've gotten on stage and been in tremendous pain. And then by the end of my set, in like 5, 10, 15 minutes, it's gone, all gone. And that's really important to me.
I do think there is a lot of storytelling involved in stand up too. Obviously shorter stories, or maybe we would say flash if it was written down or something. You know what I mean? But
Right.
yeah, there's definitely, because that hook at the beginning is usually some kind of story about your life or somebody right? And then you kind of build up to that joke.
Yeah.
Huh.
And also, like I talk about this a lot in my teaching work, but like the manipulation of beats and like getting a specific response out of an audience without being completely direct about it. That fascinates me. That's always fascinated me. So that's one of the things that's drawn me to comedy.
Huh.
The next book that I'm working on is set in a version of the New Orleans comedy scene.
Ooh, exciting. That
Now,
sounds good.
is this in the Percival Graves or the Perilous Graves universe, or separate?
I would say that it is contiguous, but they're not in the same world. But has anyone from this world or that world crossed over into the other? Like, yeah, I'd say so.
So while we're talking about it, what other projects do you have coming up that you want to tell everyone about?
Well, I had a story come out in Bourbon Pin in July that I'm very proud of, that people seem to still be discovering. Bourbon Pin 33. The story is called Fat Kids, and then I believe my column is out in the new issue of FNSF. It's a speculative poetry review column, because I'm also a poet, and I love
Awesome.
reading, thinking, and writing about poetry. I also have a review coming out in a future issue of Uncanny Magazine, but I'm not sure which issue exactly. And those are the most pressing things other than the novel I'm working.
Awesome.
Awesome. And where can everyone find you online?
You can find me at alexjennings.net. I'm on Twitter. That's the one thing I'm willing to dead name, under Magic Negro, Magick. And I'm on Instagram under the same name as well. And I'm on Blue Sky Social at Alexander.Jennings. And yeah, that's where I am.
Excellent.
Awesome. Well, pleasure having you on. So glad to get to talk to you finally.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thank you.
Okay, that was our interview with Alex Jennings. Before we continue on, don't forget to share our podcast on your socials, whatever those may be. There's a reason why Kat's laughing, but we are not going to reveal that.
Yes.
Also, don't forget you could rate and review us. That would be great. Haven't checked those recently. I really need to go out there and see if there's any more good reviews. But
Yeah.
we're getting a bunch out there. So we could always use more though.
Well,
And if you've been wondering, go ahead.
I was going to say, if people enjoyed this episode, we have literally dozens and dozens more with some amazing writers, including the writer Zigzag Claiborne, who you heard us mention multiple times.
Oh gosh, we've got at least 2 with Zigzag, maybe 3. Can't remember. But yeah, we've had some really awesome guests on. We had Tana Reeve Dew last month.
Oh, so good.
She was phenomenal. I mean, we've had Martha Wells on. We've had Corey Doctorow on.
Yeah.
Who else have we had? We've had some good ones.
We get the good people, right?
Yeah. And I'd be honest, some of our most interesting guests have been some of the little more obscure
Yeah.
people too. I would
Absolutely.
highly recommend not skipping those episodes because
Yeah.
everybody that we invite on is super interesting and has something to say. So also, we have our Patreon if you want to support us that way. That's at patreon.com/ifthisgoeson. And then finally, and then I'm done talking about it. We also have Ko-fi. That's Kofi. You can go out there and you can just search us in the search bar. We will pop up and you can just give us like a one-time donation if you don't want like the ongoing monthly thing that's involved with Patreon. So, yeah. So, Kat,
Yes.
thoughts, opinions about Alex and his work and
I knew he was going to be amazing, and he revealed things about the book that I hadn't known. So I pronounced this an amazing and very fruitful interview.
Yeah. There was a lot of synchronicity in this book, in this episode for me. Kind of weird. I mean, I had mentioned the Phantom Tollbooth thing earlier in the episode, but like some of the music stuff that's in the book, and I've been to New Orleans a couple times, and I've always
Yeah.
had a really great time there. And I've been to
Yeah.
Baton Rouge too, actually. I will tell my New Orleans story. I went there with Chris Snyder, who sometimes does music for this show. Okay. And so we were down there and we were like walking around because this is when we were in our 20s and we were artistes, and writers and whatnot. So we went into this graveyard and was gonna like do some drawings and whatever. And I was going to write some poetry because I was a poet at the time.
Right.
And so we were just hanging out in there, chatting a little bit and doing our thing. And so we go to leave and we are locked into the graveyard. So, and this is like 12 o'clock noon. This is not like the middle of the night or something, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, fuck. We're fucking locked into the graveyard. And there's a huge fence. It was like a 10 or 12-foot fence, right? It couldn't have been that high. It must have been like 7 foot or something like that.
Okay.
But it's not like, it was not like one of those that you could easily climb over, right? Oh my God. So we sit around for a while. We're like, what the hell are we going to do? And we're walking around the graveyard. So finally, we decide we're going to climb on the top of this tomb and leap over the gate or leap over the fence, which is what we did. And if I did it now, I'd probably like break my leg or something. But we were in our 20s, so we were like, all right, here we go.
In your 20s, you can definitely do that sort of thing in a way that you don't even think about how easy it is at the time.
Yes.
Well, so you made it over the fence and you made it back to your festival?
Yes, we made it over the fence and back to the festival. But I always like to tell a story of how we were locked in the graveyard and trapped in there, and it was so funny because we really panicked for a minute. We were like, oh shit. Yeah. Like, when do they come back? We don't even know. Why is it closed at 12? What is happening?
This is how they get the new corpses to bury.
Right. And it was one of the, those graveyards that you always see, in the photos and stuff from New Orleans where they're above ground, right? and so there's like
Right,
all the
right.
above ground tombs and stuff, but
Yeah.
it was fun. But so what are you reading these days? Anything cool?
Um, I am reading it's a horror novel called Burn the Negative by Josh Winnig, which I'm
Oh,
enjoying. It is nice and creepy. And then queued up after that, I'm so excited about this Stephen Graham Jones Don't Fear the Reaper, which is the second in his Indian Lake trilogy.
I know I've mentioned this before, but I've only read two things by Stephen Graham Jones. One, which I was like, meh, I didn't really care for, and then the other, which is probably the most disturbing short story I've ever read in my life. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, he's had some that are really. He had when he came to Clarion West, he read this short story that was a kind of zombie landscape story. This guy had all these kittens basically tied to his belt, which he
Uh,
would use to distract the zombies when they were coming after him, which
wow.
it was pretty dark. It was pretty dark.
That is
Tell
dark.
you that.
That is totally dark. I am reading, it's called, I'm trying to find the full title. Here it is. Found, an anthology of found footage horror stories, edited by,
Oh, I did that. Okay.
oh, it's cool. It's good. It's good.
Uh,
Edited by Andrew Call and Gabino Iglesias.
that's I love Gabino Iglesias. We should have him on here to interview. Actually, he would be amazing.
We should. I'm writing his name down so I don't forget.
Yeah, write his name down.
Oh, it's been really good so far. I'm only a few stories in, but Josh Roundtree's in here. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Mhm.
I like everything I've read by him so far. I've not read any of his long works, but most of his short work. And then I don't recognize all the names. You know, I'm not as up on the horror stuff as I am on everything else.
Right. Right.
But it's really great. It's really great. And then the next thing I'm reading is it is oh, this is for the next episode because we're recording. Diane and I are going to be recording the next episode soon because I'm trying to stock up for the holidays so I can
Yeah, yeah.
take December off. But it's the Nightmare Box and Other Stories by Cynthia Gomez, so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Awesome. That should be really good.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it from a lot of people whose opinions I trust. So
Mhm.
definitely looking forward to that. Well, I think that's it for us.
All right. Well, it's been delightful, Alan. Thank you for interviewing Alex with me because I have been so excited about this interview.
Yeah, I know you have. I know you have. And whenever we're doing an episode that one of my co-hosts is excited by, I get like additional excitement. You know what I mean? Because they're so
There you
excited,
go.
I get excited. Everyone gets excited, and it's always awesome. So,
Awesome. Well, stay cool is my exhortation to you and our listeners.
yep, yep. And that's it for us. We are bringing you hope, one episode at a time. If This Goes On, Don't Panic is edited and produced by Alan Bailey. Our theme music is by Father Flamethrower, additional music is by Christopher Snydrowski, and outro music by Sable Aradia. Intro by Dave Robinson. A special thanks to our guest, Alex Jennings. Thanks for supporting us, and we'll see you again soon.